Thanks for tuning in, my NASCAR Saturday night viewers. Host Greg DePalma here to get you ready for Sonoma on Sunday. So I hope everybody's having a good evening, or if you're checking us out, maybe you're coming home from the bars and you're hopefully coming home safe and you're checking out what's going on, or who knows, maybe you're smoking the old, you know what? I think I'll do that a little bit later on. And you're looking for something to just, I don't know, preoccupy the rest of your night before you go to sleep, or maybe you're watching in the morning before the race. Of course, it's a West Coast race, so even though it never really matters for NASCAR, even though it should, but it's a road course race. It's the last road course race of the season. We've had back-to-back San Diego last week, and we went over all of the information about how SVG, heavy favorite, minus 450 to 1. Remember last Saturday night, minus 450 to 1. And what happens? Exactly why we inform you with years of experience that shit happens in NASCAR races that have nothing to do with the best driver. And it happened. Now, it doesn't happen every race. There's only 4 of them, I think, right? And the street, is it 4 road and a street? I know they took one away last year, thank goodness, or away from last year. And I think it's a good thing. I know some fans really do like the road course races. The reason why, it's not like I don't think that there's nothing that, I mean, like, I understand it brings something to the sport. I get it. But I just think it's too much. And so, especially back to back. And I also don't think it's very fair to the rest of the field, because we don't look, I don't know if they're going to switch this next year, if it was a last second thing, which I'm grateful for them to go back to Charlotte twice with the 1.5 mile trioval now, how good it is with this next gen car. So they made the right move there. Now I'm just wondering whether or not it was, well, we made it so late we couldn't really change anything, but next year we're going to go ahead and move a road course race back to the playoffs. So I don't know. I mean, they do have that worldwide technology race in the playoffs, which is really bad. But in general, it's at least better than it was last year in my mind. Again, I just think for a variety of reasons, I could do without it. And last week was a prime example. I mean, man, that race, you just throw away all the handicapping, everything we talked about last week, basically. Remember when we were going over long shots and I said, because of Corey Heim, because of his practice run, I said, you know, I would pick Corey Heim as one of these long, you know, whenever he races, we've spoken very highly of him. We think he's a really good pick as a long shot in some of the races he's been in. But we were like, well, Toyota, they've done nothing all weekend. Practice, qualifying on Saturday, they did nothing. They were terrible. So why would we go with a Toyota driver? Toyota wins. Corey Heim wins. So, yeah, it was just a very weird race, but it's also why the one thing I did say last week, remember, what was that slogan from the movie War Games? The only winning move is not to play. That's what I said last week, and now you know why. Okay, so now what happens this week? Does that mean now, because SVG lost last week, that he's going to win this week? More than likely, yes. The good news is, though, or his odds are almost in half. So now he's a little bit more reasonable, even though he's still kind of out of the range for the average sports gambler. But in fantasy, I think it's one of those weeks that you should probably just go. I don't know if you go with multiple options. I know there was some contest where you can put in as many as you want. Some have limits. Some you could just do one. I prefer the one. I shouldn't say that. I'd prefer one where you can have up to 5, which is, I think that's fair. As long as it's a big contest, there's a lot of entries, a lot of people, then I think 5's fair, because I have no problem with having multiple. I do multiple, and this is a perfect week to do multiple entries because I'm going to do one with SVG and one without them. So we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Before we get into taking a look at the speed charts, some interesting tidbits that we talked about on Tuesday. Don't forget, we do our show every Tuesday with CJ Radoon from RotoWire. He is our resident NASCAR F1 expert. RotoWire.com. Right now, you can look at the link in the description of this video. You can check out his DFS report at RotoWire.com. You can find out what he thinks about the race. It's still before qualifying and practice. But anyway, on Tuesday, CJ and I go over everything. And one of the things we talked about is the fact that there's 36 races that they've had in the Cup Series at Sonoma, but there's only 3 drivers that are current that will be out there on Sunday. 3. That's it, who have won at Sonoma. Larson's done it twice. SVG did it once. And Suarez. He was the other one. That's it. Every other driver out there, whatever it is, 33 other drivers out there have never won at Sonoma before. Chevy has been the dominant manufacturer here, really for the most part, since next gen. Toyota had a really good year in 2023. Chevy's won 3 out of the 4. Toyota won in 23. Ford had a really good year in 2024, even though they didn't win. They finished 2nd and 3rd. They were right there with Chevy. But Chevy's been the dominant one. They haven't had a bad year. And even just recently, especially if you look at it, the last 2 years and 3 out of 4, Chevy's been the dominant manufacturer. And if you look at, and again, they've had 3 of the 4 wins. And if you look at the starting position and practice, this is another situation where if you do not have if you do have a qualifying or practice session outside the top 15, then next gen winners have said you're not going to win. Now, there's only been one circumstance, one out of the 8 sessions. You've had 4 qualifying and 4 practice sessions out of the 4 years. Out of the 8 sessions, only one time has one of the winners scored outside the top 10. And that was in practice 2 years ago, 14th fastest. Okay, otherwise, all other drivers have finished 8th or better in both sessions. Okay, so you've got to be fast. Now, this is important. I didn't really understand what they were doing today. I really don't. Hopefully, I'll remember to talk about this with CJ on Tuesday. But I do not understand why on qualifying today that they divided it into 2 groups, just like practice. I don't understand why they did that. They've never done that before that I remember. And so and the reason is because unlike last week, which was pretty, I'm sure last week was also a little bit, remember we talked about how crazy it was where they qualified and even though it was a 15-minute session or whatever it was, they didn't start until 8 minutes and the other group didn't start until 4 minutes, whatever the hell. But this week, they're in a position where group 1 in practice goes out first, and then group 2 goes out and is clearly faster. And it's because the way the setup is, or just the way the track is at Sonoma, every track's different. The more wear and tear, the better on the track. And so they go to qualifying and they do the same thing. So that meant group 1 was going to just be behind the 8 ball. They were just not going to be able to hang with group 1. So that makes it very difficult. Now, the good news, of course, is that group 1 is normally drivers who finish way back, but you're going to get drivers who are involved in wrecks, bad timing from last week. They just had a bad week and they got to start with group 1. There are times where it doesn't matter. This week it did. And SVG was one of them. So, and we're going to get into and show you exactly how that all worked out. So I didn't like that. That made it very, very, I mean, it was just made it difficult, but we kind of figured out a way to hopefully make it work. And again, we'll go over that. So let me go ahead and pop it up. You don't need to see me anymore. Okay, where are we? That's my fantasy. We'll get to that later. Okay, so this is the starting lineup. All right, now the way this worked out, I got so many paperwork here because of that. All right, because we have the qualifying and the practice and the two groups. So SVG, as you can see, he's sixth. Now he was first fastest in Group 1. All right, yet sixth fastest. That tells you right there, because we know SVG is the best. So it's pretty easy to kind of figure out, well, it's obvious Group 1's slower. And how does that affect everybody else? Well, there's only a few drivers that I'm going to look at it and I'm going to give a little bit of a break to and say, okay, and these are the drivers who did really well, both in practice and qualifying in Group 1. That would be SVG, Byron, Zilich, Bell, and John Hunter Nemechek. Those are the drivers that I will say, okay, I don't care where their practice speeds necessarily were in qualifying, but they both did well in their group. Okay. So for instance, SVG in qualifying, it was first, Byron third, Bell fourth, Zilich fifth, John Hunter sixth. In practice, SVG was first, Byron second, Zilich fourth, John Hunter fifth, Bell sixth. Okay. So that's the reason why you're going to have to. Okay. So let's also talk about manufacturers, because no surprise, Chevy had a good day. Chevy was 5 out of the top 6 in qualifying, even though they did not sit on the pole. As you can see, that's Ty Gibbs. And 5 out of the top 10 in practice. Now, Toyota was 4 of the top 8 in practice, 3 of the top 8 in qualifying, and the pole sitter. Ford was the slowest by far. 1 of the top 14 in qualifying and 1 of the top 10 in practice, even though they had the fastest car, which was strange. But who was it? Blaney. All right. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that all you had to do when you were watching is see that the drivers, especially Gibbs and Hocevar, they both hit their fastest speeds with like seconds to go in qualifying. So they were like the last of the last of the last. And for a second, that just exemplifies what we're talking about here, is that the longer you waited, the more that the track was damaged by the cars, the better it was. Damaged in a positive way. So that's why I'm not going to take what Ty Gibbs and Carson Hocevar did that much. I mean, I'm not going to take it into effect too much. I'm not going to go, oh, wow, they're definitely the best cars. I mean, they're the fastest. They were fast cars, don't get me wrong, but they took advantage of the track. And that's why they're sitting there in the front row. Okay. And then let's take a look at the rest. Who disappointed in qualifying? Zilich 17th. But again, I'm not going to say he's disappointed because he was in Group 1. Elliott disappointed at 18. Let's see. Zane Smith 24th. I was disappointed by that. He was my official long shot on Tuesday. Bubba, disappointed by Bubba's 26th. That was CJ's official long shot. But that's it. Not a lot of other disappointments as far as qualifying. Now in practice, okay, so again, there's Blaney. You don't see another Ford until Buescher. And there's Larson, had a really good day. There's Bubba with the 4th in practice, making up or looked good from the beginning. And as far as disappointing practice sessions, Hocevar only 16th. Elliott, 19th, did not have a good day, really. Zilich, but again, I'm not going to hammer on him. And nobody else, really. So there really aren't a lot of disappointing drivers today. Just a few. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. Either live or on demand regarding what I'm talking about here, because, I could even confuse myself. Awesome. Love to hear that. Attaboy, Hunter. Okay. So, yeah, I use the word damaged, and Hunter's being right when he uses the word grip. That's just my street mentality. CJ would have used grip too. Okay. So let's go with, let me get out of here. And let's pop up the odds. Okay. So there you see Gibbs and Hocevar on the front row. Now, I'm not really going to, I don't think Gibbs is a good value here now at 10-1. His odds, what were his odds? His odds were 18-1 on Tuesday. So not a big deal. A little bit of a move up, of course. Yeah, he deserves that. And he's really good on the road courses. We know that. I still just don't like where he is right now. We talked about it last week. And sure enough, it happened again where he did not have a great race. So they're just not in a good zone right now. And the other thing is, he usually starts well here, but doesn't finish well here. He's got a -40 in positions at this track, okay, over his career. -40. Average start 7.3, average finish 20.7. And considering he's not on his game right now, on his race right now, I'm just going to pass. Then you've got Hocevar, who still is not ready to be, I think, a road course winner. We all know how fun it is to follow Hocevar, and he can go out there in a lap, and he's a good qualifier. He's good in practice, but he's a good qualifier. Specifically, he can burn the lap, and we know this. It doesn't matter what the track is. He can put up a good lap. He's fast and all that, but it takes a lot to do it lap after lap after lap, and especially in a road course situation where Carson does not have a good history. He's getting better. He started second last week, but again, didn't necessarily finish well, which was a disappointment. So I don't really think that. Now, the good part is, even though he's not like 10-1, you are getting 25-1. So it's not the worst idea in the world, but I do think there are better valued options out there, considering it's still, I think, a big ask to expect Carson to be able to do this the entire race. But hey, 25-1, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. Now we go to the next lane, and this is a good one because we keep thinking that at some point Kyle Larson is going to win again, and he's starting to get close. Now, he's still not leading enough laps, even though he had a good week last week again, which was another good start. But as we said on Tuesday, this is the thing about Larson. He is hit or miss here, which I think is giving me a feeling after today that maybe we can get a hit. Maybe we'll get a hit out of him tomorrow. Because Larson, average start 4.5, Okay. Average finish 15.0. That includes 2 wins in his last 5. So that's not really great fantasy-wise. But he's got the 2 wins. And really, those wins were he had another race that was okay, where he finished like, I don't know, 5th and started 8th. I don't know, something like that. And then he got to 2 wins. Every other race, not good. Get this. Kyle Larson in 11 Cup starts. Okay. Minus 116 positions. You see what I'm saying? And this includes the wins. Minus 116 positions. And of course, it includes the wins because you'd have to be on the pole so to not lose. But that's the most I've ever talked about. Ever. It's not even close. Minus 116. So it is just like that. It's hit or miss. Okay. And 7-1 is no bargain. I mean, you were getting 14-1. So the odds have been cut in half, which probably deserves it with the day he had. He had the best day. Okay. He was second in practice and third in qualifying. So nobody was that good, even close to it. SVG was the closest. He was 6th and 5th. Okay. And then McDowell, my top pick from Tuesday. I just feel that it's about time, man. Last road course of the season. Come on, McDowell. You got to get a win here now. 5th, 2nd, and 10th in the 3 road courses this year. And in the next gen, his average start is 8.5, average finish 4.0. How about that? And he's got 4 top 10s, 3 top 5s, and a runner-up at this track, even though he hasn't led a lot of laps at all. And that does concern you in fantasy. I get it. But I'm doing this because I'm going to kind of put my chips in with McDowell this week, especially now that he's gotten off to this start of 4th. Okay. And by the way, 16-1. He's right next to these other drivers here, especially Larson and Gibbs. And McDowell has been better than these drivers this year on the road courses. Chastain and SVG. All right. So Chastain, as we mentioned on Tuesday, that he is really starting to slowly figure things out, but it's getting to a point where the only way he's going to make the playoffs is he's got to win races. And he's got to do even more than that probably. So he has his work cut out for him. But what's good is he's not only trending on the year in the right direction, he's also trending on the road courses in the right direction. And now he's got 4 top 10s out of 6 races at the track. And he had 2 top 10 sessions today. So a lot to like there, including the fact that he's 45-1. I was hoping to get a bigger number from him in fantasy, though, as far as his salary cap. So that was a little bit too high, but he should be an option for you for both reasons. And then there's SVG. What else am I going to say about SVG? I don't think there's anything for me to say. We all know how good he is. All right. So Briscoe and AJ, that's the next lane. And both of them very similar. Briscoe 7-8, AJ 8-9 as far as the rank sessions today. And they were both good options. You have Briscoe, who was 33-1. Now he's 25-1. The only problem with Briscoe, the main problem we have is he is trending in the wrong direction, gets off to a slow start this year, starts to really look good. Then the last couple of races, he's kind of going the wrong way. And he doesn't really, he has 1-5, really has 1 top 15 in 3 road course races this year, 17th last week. The good news is that he raced for the first time with Joe Gibbs last year, started second, finished second. And he was lined up with SVG on I don't know how many, it seemed like 3 or 4 restarts late and never even tried, in my opinion, to really get tough with SVG. I was a little bit disappointed in the way Briscoe raced SVG, because I want to see these drivers really bang it up, especially against SVG. They're just too nice. And then you've got AJ, who is the same odds basically as he was on Tuesday. That's really good considering he's got 3 top 10s this year on the road courses, 9th, 7th, and 5th. And we know how good he is on the road courses. This is it for him. Last chance to get a win more than likely on the season. And he starts in the top 10 once again, but he gets a really good number. So AJ is a really nice long shot, but you're not going to get any breaks with fantasy. He's going to be up there. Hamlin and Logano. So I think Hamlin and Logano would be very happy with top 10s. I think they'd be happy finishing where they're starting. Denny, he's not a road course driver. And neither is Logano. Logano's a little bit better than Hamlin. And as far as Logano, just like Larson, he is baby steps, not as good as Larson, but he's starting to finally show some consistency on Saturday and Sunday. He's done that the last few weeks, and you really need to start paying attention now to Joey because he's there also at the line, cutoff line to get into the playoffs. He's got more than enough time, and he'll get in. But it's just a matter now of him continuing to show momentum and make a very dangerous case, as he's done before plenty of times on these even years. Now, he hasn't had a top 5 since Martinsville. He hasn't had a top 10 on a road course. But he does have 3 top 10s in his last 5 appearances at Sonoma with 2 top 5s, and he's led 25 laps during that span. So I wish he was starting 15th so he had better position, because I don't really trust Joey Logano to finish top 5, or I'm not even sure I'd feel comfortable top 7. But, talking fantasy wise, of course. But out of these two, I'm definitely going with Joey Logano over Hamlin, 66-1. So he's not the worst idea in the world for a long shot. So I would definitely consider that. But again, I do think there are other options. Even though AJ is half as much, I feel a lot better with AJ, and it's still a big number. All right, let's move on to the top contenders. All right, so here we go. Well, here's the problem, Hunter, is if this happened like 10, 15 years ago, the other drivers wouldn't give a shit if SVG was respectful. Just the way it was. So, it's sort of like what we saw on Sunday with Reddick and Heim. And the announcers called it respect. I called it wussification. I also call it the athlete of today. I think it's not just and teammates, and I've got 5 wins already. It's just not a good look, because the fans, that's not what we want to see. We don't want to see Tyler Reddick. I mean, he went out of his way to open the door for Corey Heim. And when he didn't have to, he didn't do it intentionally. It was an accident. And it's just, come on, man. So, now look, his car got screwed up anyway, which is another reason why. Just race hard. He's going to pass you anyway. Do it that way. Nobody wants to see that. You think anybody wants to see that? They put money on Reddick? You got money on Reddick and he's doing that? It's good for you, Hunter. So, and anybody that have Corey Heim. But that's just, you just never saw that. And it wasn't even 30 years ago. You never saw that 5-10 years ago. And it's just getting really, really, there's just a fine line between respect. Sort of, I mean, look what happened with, what was it? Was it Heim and Hocevar, was it? Where Heim wrecked Hocevar to get him back for what happened a few years ago? I didn't see any respect there. I mean, and I'm not saying that Hocevar doesn't deserve it, because he's going to get a lot more of those there's a lot of shit he's pulled. But I'm okay with that, and I think Hocevar needs to be okay with that as well. And I'm sure he is. That's just the way it used to be. And I don't want to sound like grandpa here. It's just that I don't know how, unless it's one of those situations. Remember a couple of years ago we used to see nobody wants to see like at the end of a race, and especially the shorter track races, and you can't pass, and then the only way you could pass is if you kind of you could either intentionally wreck them, or you can bump them a little bit, get them squirrely, and then pass, which is the professional way to do it, the respectful way. But even just a few years ago, we've seen some of these drivers where it's just, and look, I don't agree with that. That's the one thing I don't like. I don't like if you've got someone behind someone else and they can't get around, so they're just going to wreck them. Well, you can't do that. Because that's just out of line, right? But there is a way to do it where you can race somebody tough, and it's not, and you're also being respectful. I'm going to race you respectfully tough, and I'm not going to put myself in a position where I accidentally bump into you, and then I'm like, oh, sorry, go ahead. Come on. Okay. Enough of that. Let's go back. Let's talk about the contenders. And look, Reddick just won't go away. The problem with Reddick is, and we've said it the last couple of weeks or the last week, because it's only been a very small deal, but he's now finished 35th and 25th in his last 3 races. He also has a second. And so and then when I take a look at his history here, I see average start 5.4, average finish 20.2. That worries me. The good news is this is a different Reddick. And in his last 2 races, he's finished 6th and 8th. But he's only gained in 1 out of 5 in the Cup Series, 1 out of 5. And that was last year when he finished 6th and he started 8th, gained 2 spots. Okay, so look, we said it with Gibbs and we said it with Reddick recently that it should, nobody is going to go through an entire season where everything's going great. And the 2 of the last 3 races, things are just happening to Reddick. And this is what happens. So it just is the way of the sport. And that's why as much as at 14-1, I look at that and I go, wow, that's not bad. I get Tyler Reddick at 14-1 and he was 3rd fastest in practice. So, and I still think he's a good option. Don't get me wrong. I think he's definitely good value. It's just the time. It's just, I don't know if I'm willing. I wouldn't, it wouldn't be a bad idea to throw a few bucks on him. I just wouldn't want to go all in right now. Okay. And then you got Byron, and you're probably going, well, how is Byron 45-1 when he qualified 13th and practiced 10th? And remember, he was one of the drivers that I was going to give a break to because he was 3rd fastest in Group 1 in qualifying and 2nd fastest in Group 1 in practice. The problem is he's terrible here and he's on a really bad run right now. So because of that, yeah, I understand the 45-1 now. Bell. Now, these odds I did not expect. So if you want to go out there and throw a couple of bucks on Christopher Bell, go for it, because I did. If he races the whole race, and even though he's got the injury, and I know the main thing he's trying to do is just get a top 10, top 15. He doesn't want a 30th or a 40th. I get that. But he's 80-1. And Bell, as we talked about also on other shows, remember that team, they've done one of the best jobs in next gen in being able to strategize, fuel, and win or put himself in position to try to steal wins. And he stole a win a few years ago doing it. So that's the reason why I would be a little bit wary about Christopher Bell at 80-1. I think that's inviting me to say, "Oh, throw a few bucks on him." And okay, I'll do it. I'll oblige. But I wouldn't bet him in fantasy because that's a little unknown there. Okay, Buescher and Blaney, and this is a good combo here because again, Blaney was first fastest in practice, and Buescher was actually came in here as a very good fantasy driver. If you take a look at Buescher over his career, where is it? Average start, 12.5. Average finish, 6.2. This is next gen. He's gained 25 spots during that time period. In his last 5 races this year, he's been better in all 5, result-wise, including 9th, 7th, and 6th in his last 3 races. And he's coming off his best street road race of the season, 6th. And he's also gotten better in all 3 road races this year. So he's trending in the right direction, just like Chastain, but even better, trending in both. And he's also been very good fantasy-wise. So I think Buescher, a very good option as well at 35-1. Now we're starting to get into that situation where we talked about before, where history is not good when it comes to starting positions at this area. Not good. But hey, it's a big number. That's why I didn't. If you haven't already invested in them and you're thinking of investing in them before the race tomorrow, keep that in mind. And I would just invest in some of them. I just wouldn't invest a lot. And then you have and Blaney. I think that's a fair number. Zilich. I still want better than 12-1, but I get it. At least see if he was starting in the top 5. He'd probably be 7-1 or something, and that would be stupid. But at least you're getting 12-1, and I don't really care about the starting position because he was 5th fastest in Group 1 and 4th fastest in practice in Group 1. And so and then we know he can do it. Heim did it last week, so why not Zilis this week, right? But 12-1, that's the problem. That's why I'm like, I wouldn't mind putting a couple of bucks on him, but I'm not getting any value from this kid. Elliott, who was slow today, and check out Elliott as far as his career here. Last 5, his average start at Sonoma, 6.2. Average finish last 5, 4.4. And he's led 49 laps during those last 5 races. Now, 2 problems. 1, he hasn't had a top 5 since the Texas win. That's his last 6 races. Average finish 20.5. And this year on the road courses, he hasn't had a top 5, just 1 top 10. But we know he can do it on the road courses. And we are getting 50-1 on Chase Elliott. So I think, and the good thing about fantasy too is he's starting 18th. So I really, hey, if I can get Chase Elliott to finish in the top 10 or the top 5, 50-1 as well, I think that's, it's Chase. The only problem is, last week it wasn't a show, nothing showed, and you kind of get the feeling that even though there's great value here today, that the way things have gone and all that, I mean, you might just want to pass, but I just think he's kind of too good to pass up for me in fantasy, especially. And then as far as the rest, let's see. Priest Priest and John Hunter Nemechek are good fantasy options. Priest is coming off an 11th place finish last week. That's his best of the season on the roads. He's also gained 35 spots in his last 4 on the next gen at Sonoma. And John Hunter, who's got a big number, even a lot bigger. What is he, 350 or something? John Hunter, he has 3 straight top 20s. Well, he's actually finished 16th or better in his last 3 races overall. 4th a couple of weeks ago. And he's been 17th or better in all 3 road races. So that's pretty good when you're looking for bargains on your teams, and he's a huge number to win the race. And then Suarez is there. Suarez got the win, but other than that, he's never really done anything at Sonoma except to win. Zane Smith, look, I just like the way they figure things out, even during the race, if they got to strategize their way to the front. And so, yeah, I mean, fourth last week, 3 top 10s in his last 5 on the season. A lot I like about Zane Smith right now, as you know. And he's a big number, and I think he would be a good fantasy play. I don't know about winning the race. He'd have to fuel mileage it, but, you know, he's 24th, a lot of position to make up on fantasy. And Bubba, he gets me nervous when I put him on my fantasy team, because it seems like 80% of the time he'll do something stupid. And he has terrible history at this track, but he's having the best year of his career on the road courses. Second last week after being down 2 laps, and his last 3 races, he's finished second and third. So there's a lot to like about that. He was fast in practice, as we talked about, but he just didn't put a good time together in qualifying. So I would be very disappointed financially as far as to pick him. But I think now that he's 26, that's a good option for fantasy. And the only other drivers that I would throw out there that's not on the list, you might want to consider possibilities, and we'll get into it in a second, would be Austin Hill, Herbst, and Custer. Because Custer was 3rd fastest in practice in his group. Hill was 2nd fastest in qualifying in his group. And Herbst is racing the best that he's raced over the last 4 races in his career. Let's pop up the fantasy. And I do have 2 lineups. So this is the non-SVG lineup I did. Okay, so let me see where I have it. This is the non-SVG lineup. And I have McDowell in both lineups, and I have John Hunter Nemechek in both lineups. Those are the only 2 I have in both lineups. McDowell, because he's my top pick. John Hunter, because I think he's the best value. Because I was looking at some of these other value guys down here, and there really wasn't a whole lot to choose from. I was searching. I was like, come on, give me something. And you might throw a dart at a board, really. As the only one that even remotely sticks out to me would be Custer, because of the practice speed that he had. And he actually has shown a little bit of something lately, which doesn't take much considering what kind of year it's been for him. Because all these other drivers have done nothing. And Eric Jones has been terrible on the road courses this year and last week. And Dylan's never been good on road courses. And Keselowski has just been a nightmare. I mean, he would be a perfect option in fantasy. He's been great here in fantasy, but we've been saying that for the past 6 weeks or so. And the last, month, he just has done nothing. So, yeah, I mean, that's why John Hunter was the way to go in my mind at 5,900. And Hill, like I said, he's 63. He's a little bit higher up, but he's also starting 12th. So that's a little bit high. And then you've got Herbst, the other one. At least he's 25th. There's a movement there. Let's see. Yeah, and Zane Smith, who is in my other team, 24th. There's Logano. The only problem is I don't know. Logano, I don't know. I mean, is he going to lead any laps? Is he going to finish a lot higher than 10th? That's why I don't know. See, Wallace is 26th. So, and I have him in my SVG group. So the other 4 I have outside of McDowell and John Hunter, of course, that's my SVG team. I have SVG, Wallace, Priest, and Zane Smith. So obviously I had to add a few cheap ones. So I have John Hunter. I got Zane Smith at 6,600. Priest is 7,000. I went over his, I went over that, right? Yeah, I went over that. So, and then you have, and Wallace is really not expensive. He's 6,900. I just couldn't put him on both because, again, I just can't do that with Wallace. He always kind of screws me a lot. Hocevar is a nice option. The problem is he's starting second, but he's a nice option. Maybe he'll lead some laps. And if this is going to be his best ever road course race, then he's not bad at 7,200. There's Chastain. We told you about him. Same thing. He's starting fifth. That's the only kind of knock, but it's like a knock in one hand and it's good in the other because especially Chastain. Well, actually, Chastain was, there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the 10 qualifiers in the top 10 also practiced in the top 10, and Chastain was one of them. Bell, you're getting 7,700 on Christopher Bell on a road race, but there's a reason for that. And AJ at 8,200 is not bad. Okay, so now I have Blaney in this one with Elliott and Buescher and Larson. All right, so Larson kind of takes the place of SVG in this one. And I wanted one where I could eliminate SVG because his incredible price. What's his price again? Look at that. 3,500 more than the next Reddick. That's a lot. That's the most you're going to get all year long in this league. So I gained, 5,500 by going with Larson. And that gave me the opportunity to add a Buescher, a Blaney, and then even an Elliott in the 8,000s. Because what I like about Blaney and Buescher is that they're both in pretty decent positions, 15th and 16th. And even Elliott, again, 18th. I'm kind of getting suckered in by that. But I don't know. I mean, look, he's 8,000. So if I were to change my mind before tomorrow, then who would I change my mind with? Who would I change my mind with? See, I don't want to put another one in that I already have. That's the problem. I don't know. See, that's the reason why I decided to go with him, because I thought that, I mean, if I had an extra 100, which I don't, AJ would have been a perfect one. I could have easily swiped out AJ for Elliott, but I only have $100 left over. So I can't do it. I'm screwed. So that's too bad, because I definitely want Buescher and Blaney because I didn't have him on my other team. And I definitely want Larson in here because, again, I think in the hit and miss situation, Larson could hit tomorrow, and I want him in this one. So there you go. That's the way I'm looking at it for fantasy this week and for the picks. So again, as far as outside the obvious SVG, McDowell will. I'm not deviating from my top pick on Tuesday with McDowell, and then I really got a good feeling about Blaney because he was fastest in practice, and the fact that he is in a nice little zone. 11th or better in 7 straight races coming in, and 11th or better in all road races this year. So it's just, it's like he's like this close from breaking out in a real positive way and winning. Now, maybe next week is when he'll do it at Chicagoland, but next week his odds are going to end up being a lot lower. So you can take advantage 18-1 here. And so McDowell, outside of SVG, you got McDowell. The only thing with Larson is the low number of 7-1. So I'm not really gung-ho about putting big money on Kyle Larson at 7-1. I still don't know if I can trust him. He hasn't won in a while. He just has not been able to put it together. So at 7-1 on a road course, especially, in other words, you got to beat SVG. So that's, I just can't do that. And then you got other good long shot options like Chastain, AJ Allmendinger, Buescher. And, I still don't even think that Wallace is a bad idea considering what happened last week, even though last week was completely different than what we're going to see at Sonoma, just because he's got a big number. Okay, so that is going to wrap it up. I think we have everything down. If you have any questions at all, let me know. Anything at all. I'd like to know what your picks are. Put that on the screen. And just so you have the exact information, the starting positions in next gen have been 8th, 5th, and 1st in that order. 8th, 5th, and 1st. Pole last year, SVG dominated the race. Dominated. I mean, Chevy led almost every lap last year. So Chevy and SVG dominated. It was boring. Okay. We kind of led off this video talking about road courses. Well, you know, if you want to make people believe and be on your side like me about road courses, just watch last year's Sonoma race. The practice speeds, 5th, 2nd, 14th, 3rd. So outside that 14th, 5th, 2nd, 3rd practice. So you better be pretty fast in qualifying and pretty fast in practice if you are going to win a road course at Sonoma in next gen. Unless you steal it on a few mileage strategy, which yet, and I'm going to rule out last week because last week again was just weird. But for the most part, we haven't really seen, I think maybe once we've seen somebody, and it might have been Bell, that won a race because of fuel mileage on a road course in next gen. So it's just, and I'm not saying that Hank, it can't help you in fantasy, but for winning a race, it's just not something that has really worked out for the most part. But hey, you never know when it's going to work out. Next week, it's Chicagoland. So that's good because we haven't seen it in a while. And it is a 1.5 mile track. So I think that's awesome. When was the last time we saw Chicagoland? Chicago. When was the last time we saw it? Does anybody know? Let me know. Chicago. Where is it? Let's see here. Let me see if it says it here. It should say it here. All right, Chicagoland, until 2011. I guess that's it. It opened in 2001. Let's see. Oh, no, 2019. So we have not been at Chicagoland since 2019. And EERO is their title sponsor. And that is a wireless network brand. I'll see if CJ, if I can, I'll quiz CJ on Tuesday about it. So we got Chicagoland and Atlanta the next 2 weeks. So I think that's really cool because we've had some pretty weak racing lately with the road, in my opinion. Just for my point of view, everybody's different. But I'm not a big road course guy, and then throw in Pocono, which can be a snooze fest. And yeah, it's been it's pretty lame for a while. But we got Sonoma and Chicago, we got Chicago and Atlanta, and then North Wilkesboro, Indianapolis, Iowa, Richmond, New Hampshire. Oh, I mean, yes, there's the mystique of the Brickyard is the only thing that is interesting about the Brickyard. But man, has that been a boring racetrack, even pre-next gen, post-next gen. Oh, does anybody remember a really good race that you recall? Oh, I remember one. Remember that race where they had like 17 restarts and went overtime, like, for 3 hours? That was like the best Brickyard race because everybody was crashing on the restarts and it was crazy. I think some of them were running out of gas. Was the Brickyard the one where a couple of years ago when Keselowski, I think it was, right? Let me see, where Keselowski pitted just before the restart, and Kyle Larson was able to move up and on the restart take the lead, and Blaney was fuming. I think that was the Brickyard. I'm just trying to look for it here on my, let's see. What do I have on the Brickyard? I got all my notes. Okay. Hamlin was the favorite last year, 4-1. Larson was 5-1. Blaney, Byron, and Elliott were 8-1. Let's see. Gibbs was 25-1. Hocevar 35-1. And nothing else really sticks out. So let's see. Last year, got all my notes. Wallace had a strong car all weekend and led 23 laps to win. So we all remember he was the winner last year. Let's see. Yeah, Wallace held off Larson twice on restarts because he had the inside lane. That's what happened to Blaney against Keselowski. Yeah, here it is, 2024. I got my notes on it. Keselowski leading Blaney and Larson, but I guess it was Kyle Busch at the time. Spun out with 3 to go. Keselowski decided at the last second to go for gas. Go for gas. And I put Larson in the catbird seat on the inside and was able to win, even though I think they had another restart. Pre-spun out. And they didn't call for a call. Oh, that's right. Remember that was the one where pre-spins out and they didn't call for the caution when they had plenty of time. And then all of a sudden they waited until the white flag came out and then they called the caution and then the race ended on the caution. But Larson would have won anyway because he had the inside track. That was one of those races that just was so infuriating because especially if you're a Blaney fan like me. And then as a race fan, watching that unfold, again, even though Larson would have won, but the fact that they waited, they waited. Oh, let's see. We're not at the white flag yet. Oh, white flag, caution. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Some of the things now they haven't done a whole lot of that stuff this year. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we had the two bodies come together and talk. And yet this year, mysteriously, we haven't had a lot of really dumb decisions. I'm not talking about a questionable decision here and there. I'm just talking about really stupid decisions like that one that we've seen for a long time at this sport. Okay. Oh, so last year, let's see, what else in my notes? Larson and Hamlin were the top 2 drivers coming into the race, as I mentioned, but they did not have a good Saturday. Matter of fact, Hamlin wrecked in qualifying and started in the rear. And Larson started 13th, and yet they finished second and third in the race. Interesting. Keselowski and Blaney had good cars late. Cindric might have had the best car. He led the most laps, 40. But then his tire went down when he had to lead. And that was it for him. Briscoe had a decent car, led 34 laps. And then Byron and Reddick also had good cars in the race. But I don't know why I'm talking about this. That's Indianapolis. Next week is Chicagoland, and I got no notes on that, obviously. Okay, so thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great Saturday night. It is Saturday, right? And we'll see everybody on Tuesday for our preview of Chicagoland. We'll do our best since we don't have any notes for next gen. But that makes things pretty interesting. And it'll make things interesting next Saturday night. Looks like 9 o'clock every Saturday night is the deal, right? The way things are going. So I'll probably see you guys also here next Saturday night, unless you're on demand only. Also keep in mind that I will see everybody over on the Our Lads football channel. I do all of my football shows there, interviewing, especially this time of year. All I'm doing is spending majority of my time interviewing team analysts in college football and the NFL. I've got 6 interviews next week with college football analysts, and I think I have 2 in the NFL next week scheduled so far. And then we'll keep doing that for a few weeks, but then soon, especially once we're into August, if you're a football fan, that's when every show is going to be an interview plus some prediction. Like we're going to go in and we're going to say, okay, this is what we see for the year in this conference, in this division, NFL college football. We're going to go over personal previews regarding rankings, best quarterbacks in college football, running backs, player of the year nominations, Heisman picks, all sorts of really cool stuff. Once we get into August 3rd, I believe, kicks it off on that Monday. So, and now we might even start a little earlier than that. But look, July will be here in just a few days. And then in a few weeks, that means July is the month that starts training camp in football. And so even though it's late in the month, it still kicks it off. And that's when football is going to take center stage for a lot of people. But we'll be here every step of the way, all the way through to the championship. We're not going anywhere. Saturday is going to be a little bit tough. I will admit that. But I'll be here. But they will be tough. College football is going on. I probably won't be able to blabber like this when we get to August. I mean, when we get to football season. So I might be very professional and quick. But we'll see how that goes. And hopefully, maybe they'll give me odds earlier, but it won't even matter because I'll be really busy during the day. So who knows? Maybe I'll actually do these shows later on Saturday night because I'll be maybe preoccupied with games until late. So we'll see. We'll be here, though. We're not going anywhere. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe, all that kind of stuff. That's important. If you haven't done that before, that really supports us. And we'll see you guys soon.